Hey, what's going on, No Nation? This your guy, Kelvin Hunt, editor of ChopChat.com. Welcome to the Built for Playmakers YouTube channel where we talk FSU all day, every day. Man, it is the day, Friday afternoon, an early Christmas present. It feels like FSU Board of Trustees met emergency meeting this morning, and those guys and women are not going to meet just for nothing. And if you watched the video, you could watch the video. It's actually open to the public. Basically, the Board of Trustees have voted unanimously to file a complaint or lawsuit against the ACC, basically challenging, their grant of rights. And basically, this is going to be the first domino in a move to eventually leave this pitiful conference. And I mean, it has been a long time coming. We are, FSU basically earlier this year voiced publicly and got a lot of backlash from, the general public and other fans of other ACC schools that are not serious about competing at a high level. I'm talking about the Wake Forests, the Syracuse's, and just a ton of other fan bases that are really a joke in football. And a lot of people that either work for ESPN or in the industry, kept talking about, what I'm tired of FSU whining and complaining. What are they going to do? It's all bark and no bite. Well, that's not the case. This year really proved everything that FSU needed it to prove as far as the ACC not being serious for a program like the Noles. And I mean, basically, it boils down to this. If you're watching this and you're not an FSU fan, I want to help you understand, because a lot of people seem to want to stick to the argument, oh, well, they signed a contract. Yeah, they did sign a contract. But it sounds like there were things that happened during certain periods that all the information wasn't given to the schools that were essentially forced to sign a contract. And if you watch the video, look, I'm not a lawyer, but I watched the video, and that was my interpretation of some of the information that was given. Also, if you're doing business with someone, if that person or entities are not willing to allow you to look at the contracts you've signed, make copies of them, or what have you, that's probably going to raise your eyebrow a little bit, right? I mean, if I'm doing business with you and we sign an agreement that you kind of just, you can't really read it, I guess. It sounds like they were like, hey, everybody's got to sign this, so sign it. And so you sign it, and then you went, like, can I get a copy of that and see what I signed? They're like, no. Well, you can look at it, but you can't take pictures of it. You can't make copies of it, or anything like that. I mean, that would kind of raise my suspicion quite a bit, right? And so, if you're not an FSU fan, basically it comes down to this: whenever you're an employee or you work or whatever, everybody feels they have, you bring a certain value to the table, right? And yes, we sign contracts for work all the time, but usually if you outperform that contract, you see it in sports all the time. If you outperform that contract, usually you can get a new contract, right? Well, that's not the case with FSU. FSU, they sign an agreement with all the other schools in the ACC, and FSU, even before they signed this contract, was outperforming everybody in this conference by far. I mean, by far. And when I say performing, I'm talking about TV viewership. That is what matters. And of course, some clowns want to reference, oh, but FSU hasn't won, before this year, they hadn't won the ACC since 2014. While that's true. And of course, we can go into reasons why, FSU's leadership that is no longer in place at FSU is largely responsible for the signing of these documents that are in place now. Also, they were responsible for some of the hires that took place as far as the athletic director and the football coach. So that prior administration obviously, just lacked a certain acumen, so to speak. And, that has helped put FSU in the place where it is now. But I say that to say this: FSU, even before that, was the biggest brand in the ACC by far. Everything football is the moneymaker, right? And FSU is a football school. And even though FSU fell off as far as a product on the field, largely from 2017 through 2021, I mean, they were under 500 as a program. If you include those years and go back to 2014 when they made the inaugural college football playoff, they are still the highest, most viewed program in the ACC, higher than Clemson. And if you look at this past year, it gives you a prime example. So even though FSU was sub 500 and Clemson was like at their peak, competing and winning national championships, they still were not blowing FSU out of the water, so to speak, in terms of TV viewership. Now, when you look at this past year, 2023, obviously FSU's undefeated, 13-0. Clemson fell back to earth, went 8-4. And FSU averaged 4.1 million viewers per game, and Clemson averaged 2.9 million viewers per game. So that tells you whether FSU's winning the conference or not, they are the most valuable brand in the conference. FSU is a national brand. Clemson is not, and I say, and I can prove that, right? So before the past decade, Clemson hadn't won anything since 1981, something like that. Nobody cared about Clemson. Nobody. I mean, even though before FSU got to the ACC, Clemson was the dominant program, nobody cared about Clemson. FSU was independent. FSU was going to play the Michigans, the Ohio States, all of these big time schools and winning. And obviously they got to the ACC and just ran through the ACC like a hot knife through butter. And eventually Clemson decided to get serious about football. Dabo Swinney turned that program around, and credit to Clemson for doing that. But at the same time, you see that if Clemson is not at the top tier level as far as competing for a national championship, they fall back off. Like I said, they don't even average 3 million viewers per game. And also, you have to factor in, Dabo Swinney is the coach that has brought that program to relevance, so to speak. If he leaves, what is Clemson going to turn into then? Are they going to fall back into obscurity? My guess is yes. We've seen FSU go from Bobby Bowden, RIP, GOAT. He brought FSU to national prominence. Switched to Jimbo Fisher, won a national title. Went to Willie Taggart. Now we're on Mike Norvell. So that's four different coaches, and FSU has maintained its national brand. That's staying power. That means FSU, no matter what, is gonna be a brand that people will associate with or recognize or whatever. And that's why they draw so many viewers on TV. It's either they want to see FSU win or they want to see FSU lose. But the key is they're watching the games. And that is what matters in this space. Wins and losses are important, obviously. And obviously, the more you win, the more people are going to watch, either for you to win or to lose. But in FSU is all in on competing at the highest level. Okay, so why do they want to leave the ACC? Well, there's already a huge revenue gap between FSU and teams in the SEC and the Big Ten. That gap is going to continue to widen every year for the next until 2036, which is when the grant rights or whatever for FSU and the ACC expire. So it's it's a $30 million gap now. In 5 years, it's going to be close to double that, and so it's going to compound every year on itself. And you say, well, how does that affect FSU? Well, can't they just raise more money, or whatever? Well, no. You know how much money that is? That's crazy. Not only that, FSU is one of the youngest programs in the country as far as alumni base. I mean, they didn't start playing football until, the late 40s, early 50s, when these other schools like Michigan and Alabama, they've been around since the late 1800s, right? Their scholarships are endowed. I mean, all this other stuff. So yeah, FSU's like, yep, we can't compete at that level because you're starting to talk about, money to pay coaches, assistants, support staff, all of that comes into play. And FSU has made the investment over the past couple of years to get on par with those schools in the SEC and Big Ten. I mean, that's why they're competing at an elite level, right? They should have had the opportunity to compete for a national title in the college football playoff this year. Of course, they were snubbed. And that's why they're like, we got to leave. We can't compete in the next 5 or 10 years because of money. We are valued at way more than what we're getting paid from the ACC. Why should a Wake Forest get paid what we get paid when we're doing all the work, essentially? Why is Boston College, Syracuse, all these teams getting the same amount of money that we're getting when we're doing all the work? I mean, that's just how it is in real. If you're at your job and you're in a group of people and you all signed up to do a project and you do all the work and somebody else never does anything, how are you going to feel about that? Common sense, people. Common sense. Right. So what I believe is going to happen is FSU's, they've filed this complaint, and ultimately, a lot of people will think, oh, but they've got to go to court, and it's going to, you're going to win or lose the case, and that's not going to be the case. The ACC and ESPN do not want to go to court because then you have, you're going to be subject to discovery, and they're going to have to submit documentation on different decisions that have been made and all that good stuff, and they don't want that to happen because there's a high probability there's going to be evidence of things supporting what FSU's arguing or complaining about, right? So that is why the ACC agreed to expand to admit Stanford, California, and SMU before the season began, because they knew, this is likely going to happen. They didn't know when. They didn't know if it was going to be this quick or not. But they're like, okay, if FSU leaves, that's probably going to open the door for Clemson, North Carolina. Those are the 3 schools that voted against the expansion of adding those 3 teams from the West Coast and then Texas. So those are likely your 3 schools that are going to bounce if they get an opportunity. Unfortunately, like most things, FSU has to lead the way because you got a bunch of cowards at these other schools who are not willing to do it, or they don't have the brand or the power, the value to argue like FSU does. All right. I mean, it feels like it's always been that way with FSU. FSU was independent. You had all these blue blood programs that try to, keep FSU down. What did Bobby Bowden do? He went to go play them at their place because they want to come to FSU and play. Go beat the Michigans, go beat the Ohio States at their places. And he kind of knocked the door down like, hey, you're going to let us in and we're going to kick our feet up on the table. And that's what we did. And that's what we've been doing ever since. We've been competing with all these other programs when we're way, way, way younger than them. Right. And so FSU is going to lead the way like they do in most things. And eventually they're going to reach a settlement. Probably they're going to negotiate a figure that FSU will have to pay. And whatever that figure is, I don't think it's going to be it's going to be a large figure. Don't get me wrong. I think, but it's not going to be anything close to the amount of money that they will lose if they just stay put in the ACC until 2036, right? Also, if they stayed in the ACC, you already see what the perception of the ACC is when it comes to the SEC and the Big Ten. It's already looked upon as a second tier conference that nobody respects, even though it's not necessarily true. I mean, if you look at FSU's schedule this past year, it's comparable to the schools that are in the playoff, if not better than, because FSU chooses to play two SEC schools the past 2 years in LSU and Florida, along with the Clemsons. I mean, they'll play Notre Dame next year. So that's the other thing. FSU's not scared of, not scared of competition, bro. Look, we will play anybody, anywhere, anytime, right? So, but if you stay, you're never going to win. You're never going to have an opportunity to win because you're not going to have the money to compete. Not only that, the perception is you're in a weak conference anyway. And so, I mean, you just saw an undefeated FSU team get leave out of the college football playoff. If that don't tell you all you need to know, I don't know what to tell you. All right. So in a nutshell, FSU brings the most value to the ACC by far. It's not fair that the other schools that don't do anything get the same amount of money. Also, it sounds like the ACC and the ESPN did not disclose all the information during certain periods of contract signing and whatnot, which could be a breach of contract. And the FSU will have, they're not doing this. FSU administration is not doing this without having an idea of where they can go, right? A lot of people say, well, where are they going to go? They don't have an invite to the Big Ten or the SEC. Well, the SEC and the Big Ten can't extend an invite or they'll get sued, right? So FSU has to do the work on their end as far as getting out of the conference. And then once that is on the table, then it's like the Big Ten or SEC will be like, here you go, here's your invite, right? So, it sounds like the Big Ten would be the option that makes the most sense right now, especially with how ESPN is so in bed with the SEC. But then if you join the SEC, then you're part of the family, right? So it's like, hey, you're going to get treated like the other teams in the SEC, so to speak. So, it'll be one of those two. It'll be one of those two entities. They're not going to leave the ACC to go join the Big 12. FSU's too big of a brand to do that. Okay, so this is the domino that's going to start everything else. I would expect the FSU to, they have until August 15th of 2024 to announce that they're going to leave. If they announce before then, that means they'll be in the ACC for one more year, and then they would start in whatever new conference in 2025. If they don't announce before August 2024 that they plan to leave, then it will be another year after that, right? So you kind of have to play one season in the hole before you can actually leave once you make that announcement. So I don't expect them to be in the ACC past 2025. I mean, if they did, I would be surprised. But this is what FSU has to do. I mean, they're committed to playing at a high level. They're one of the big dogs in college football. And in order to remain one of the big dogs, they got to go play with the other big dogs. And that's it, just in layman's terms. And if you're not an FSU fan and you don't understand that, then it's probably because you're a fan of a school that is not committed to playing at a high level. You're cool with winning 7 or 8 games a year. You're cool with winning 10 games in your whole life like an NC State fan. Right? So, look, the ACC is going to survive because they've signed, they've brought these other 3 schools in there. Those schools can go and join these other scrub programs and play in their little conferences and be nobodies or whatever. But, that's not what FSU is about. People trying to clown FSU for leaving. It was like, we're going to go play against the best. We want to go play against the best, not, these scrubs. We want to have an opportunity to play. So that's what we're going to do. But so that's my take on the whole deal with the Board of Trustees meeting this morning. it's a great day because this is the start of the process to leave this conference. And man, it's awesome to see. But let me know what you think. Let me know your preference, whether you want to go to the Big Ten or SEC. We'll probably do another video on that. And make sure you like this, share this. And I appreciate all the support you guys have given us. We're approaching 2,500 subscribers. And I mean, it's awesome. Appreciate you guys. Hope you have a great Christmas if I don't talk to you before then. And spend some time with your family. And I hope Santa Claus brings everything you hope for. But until next time, go Noles.